What are you looking for? This is the question that Jesus asks of the two men that seem to be following him. And to answer his question, they say, well, in effect, what hotel are you staying at? Kind of seems like a strange question. I wonder what they would have done if Jesus had said, well, the Holiday Inn. But you know what's really funny is Jesus doesn't really answer their question either. Come and see. So, to set the stage, remember that John is out in the desert and he's preaching, and what he preaches is offensive to the people, the priests of the temple. And from our lesson, we find that there are two men who were following disciples, who were disciples of John and following John, and then they turn and follow Jesus once John points out who Jesus is. But the thing is, Jesus doesn't let them off the hook. He really doesn't reassure them in any way, shape, or form exactly who he is or what he's doing. What he essentially does is invites them, come and see. And it's what's really odd to me is that they leave John, maybe with John's blessing, but they follow Jesus, they stay with him, and then one of them runs home and says to his brother, I found the Messiah, come and see what Jesus is all about. And that's what being called means. Really to answer God's call to come and see. And God calls each and every one of us. Each and every one of us has a wonderful call from God. The problem is that we don't see Jesus face to face. We don't have the joy of answering the call to him in person, face to face. And sometimes in our day and age, we really have to struggle to see what God's call is to us and to follow. And so as we continue in this new year, I think the question we always need to ask ourselves is, what is God calling me to do? So let me say that. What is God calling me to do? Not what do I want to do or what do I need to do to be a Christian. Those are different things. To me, it's kind of like a casting call. I was in theater for a while, and a director is always looking for kind of people to play different parts, and it's really funny how things turn out. One year, I tried out for a part in the chorus because I thought, oh, this will be a fun thing to do. And they cast me in the lead in a place I would never put me in the lead for, but it worked out fine. Next year, I wanted to be one of the leads because I really thought the part was perfect for me, and I was cast in a very different part. And that's kind of what happens sometimes when God calls us. We think that we're perfect to be playing a supporting role, and God says, nope, I want you to do something else. I always tell people that when I started in seminary and I was not sure that was really a call, so I started there. The bishop at the time said, if God's really, truly calling you, the more that you're there, the more right it was. I said, okay, and then I decided I was going to do X because I really was scared of getting up and preaching every Sunday. And God said, no, you're going to be in a part-time call, so you really have to not worry about that. You just got to do it. And so what we have today is two brothers who are called by God, both as disciples. And it's interesting to me to see that while they come from the same family, they have very different personalities. And what they are called to do in the ranks of the apostles are very, very different. Simon Peter, I have a soft heart for him. He's that bold and brash one. He's always ready to stick his neck out. He's always opening his mouth, kind of jumping in without thinking about it. He's the one with charisma. Hardly seems possible that Andrew is his brother, for he, on the other hand, is kind of a quiet one. And I often wonder if Andrew thought, well, I met Jesus first. Why is my brother his right-hand man? And yet, Andrew seems really happy and content in his call. So I want to look a little more closely at the call of the two brothers. I'm really glad for a leader like Peter. He always seems to be in the midst of things. We read every year of his denial of Christ at the time of crucifixion, but he jumped right in there telling Jesus that he would follow him no matter what, and we know what happened. And this is one of the lowest points in Peter's life, and even then we learn something from him, because what we learn is that Christ forgives. He's very human, very fallible. He repents, though, and accepts the forgiveness. And we can see ourselves in him. And we know a lot about Peter, because it doesn't matter what gospel you read, Peter is right there in the thick of things. But what about Andrew? Even though Andrew is one of the 12, he's only mentioned 3 times in the Gospel of John. There's like no starting sermons that we get from Peter. Rather, Andrew kind of works behind the scenes. Really gets any attention or notice. So, what do we know about him? Well, we first meet him in our lesson today. The first chapter, we find out that he sees Jesus, follows him, spends the day with him, and after spending time with him, he runs to his brother and tells him, "I found the Messiah." After one day, Andrew knows who Jesus is. And in his excitement, goes and gets his brother and brings him to Jesus. The next time we see Andrew in John's Gospel is in chapter 6, and thousands have come to hear Jesus preaching. He's gathered in the wilderness. Evening comes, and people are hungry, and Jesus says to Philip, "Where will we get enough food to feed these people?" And Philip kind of shrugs his shoulders and says, "I don't know. It'll take almost a year's wages just to buy a little loaf of bread for every person here." But then you know what? Here comes Andrew, the little boy, 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. And we know what happens after that. The last time we meet Andrew in John's Gospel is in the 12th chapter. Some Greeks have come to Jerusalem during the holy season. They want to talk to Jesus, so they go to Philip. Philip takes them to Andrew, who then brings them to Jesus. Have you noticed something about the pattern here? He's really not the flashy person that Simon Peter is. He doesn't get the headlines, but he gets the job done. Not only that, he's constantly bringing people to Jesus. He worked one-on-one. There's no headlines about him preaching a sermon that brings 3,000 people to Christ. He doesn't work that way. But he was an introducer. He introduced the boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish to the Lord. He introduced the Greeks to the Lord. He brought people to Christ. He recognizes Jesus as the Messiah, has insight where others don't. He brings Peter, who becomes the leader of the church, brings the young boy, brings the Greeks. So why am I emphasizing this, making a great fuss about Andrew? Mostly because I think few of us are called to be the Peters of the church, even if we would like to be. And I think while the Peters of the world are important in their ability to gather, to speak to crowds, I think what brings people to God are the Andrews. They may not be flashy, but they're warm and inviting. They're people who work in their community and in their congregation, and their quiet enthusiasm rubs off and permeates the spirit of the congregation in a positive and powerful way. 2, I would like to suggest to you that throughout the history of our church, from its foundations after the death of Jesus to today, there have probably been 10,000 Andrews for every single Peter. But the most important thing they do is they call others to come and see what God has done for us in Jesus Christ. I'm really glad that there are those charismatic leaders and larger-than-life leaders in our world, but I'm really, really glad for the Andrews who bring others to Christ. We, like Andrew, are called to bring people to Christ, called to tell the love of God in all we meet. We are called to live out our baptismal promise. Remember what that is? One of the things I love about our baptismal promise is that we are to proclaim Christ through word and deed. So we are called to put our faith in action. We don't even have to say a word. We can put our faith in action in our deeds to care for others in the world that God made and work for justice and peace for all people. That's our baptismal promise. It's what we promised to do. And that's what Andrew did. Not in a flashy way, but caring for others. So that 5 loaves and 2 fish feed everyone. And we can do the same. So what I'm asking you to do is be an Andrew. Sometime in the next week or month, by your words and actions, show someone who Christ is. First, engage that person in conversation. Get to know them. And then invite them. Come and see. Amen.